Welcome to Finance This, Property That. My name's Dion Fernandes, and this podcast is for property enthusiasts, time-poor professionals, self-employed borrowers, and strategic investors looking for residential or commercial property who want more than just a low interest rate. They want a strategy and a team around them. Each week, I'll share strategies, structures, and lending moves that actually grow wealth, not just get you the loan. And also, I will help you surround yourself with information from professionals in their field. If you're here to build smart, not slow, you're in the right place. My vision is to empower financial legacies for generations. I am a mortgage planner and finance strategist, and I work with doctors, developers, business owners, and high-income earners to build serious property portfolios. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Finance This, Property That. Today I want to talk to you about a topic that I'm quite passionate about, but I'm actually seeing more and more of it. Today I want to talk to you about how to fund a small development without going broke. Yeah. This is what I'm doing a lot of at the moment, and where it's a real education piece. So the three parts I'm going to talk to you about today, and we're going to highlight the top 3 reasons why developers run out of cash, my 3-stage development funding framework, and what me and my team actually do differently with our development clients. All right, let's go. So here are the top 3 reasons why developers run out of cash. 1, you underestimate your total debt costs, you're using resi lenders to do your commercial type lends, and you don't actually have a staged funding plan / your feasibility's out of whack as well. All right, what does that look like? So underestimating your total debt costs. This is your feasibility study. This is development 101. I see all sorts of different feasibility studies, from like ones written in hand on a piece of paper, you can't even read it, to a basic Excel spreadsheet with just estimated numbers. And on the extreme side, a spreadsheet with about 20 tabs. But do you really need all that? Well, yes, you do. You really, really need to understand what your costs are going to be across the whole development. What your costs, what your exit's going to be, and what the strategy is to exit. And all through that, I see a lot of clients forget that the GST component comes into play. Most lenders are going to lend, when you're lending for a development, they'll lend on the gross realization value less the GST component. Now, I'm not a tax agent, but most of my clients that do developments will claim on what's called a margin scheme. So they're claiming the GST as they're going along, which is the smart way to go because it helps with your cash flow. Again, seek advice before doing that. The other reason they run out of cash, or they don't seem to finish properly, is that you're using the wrong bloody lender. If you're trying to do a development via a residential lender and it's going to be commercial in nature, it's short-term lending, and you want all these bells and whistles, it's not going to happen. You go to a resi lender, they will generally you'll have to service the debt. Now, I don't know how many people can service millions and millions of dollars of debt when they're not, your income's lumpy, or you don't actually have the income to service it. That's one of the key things. You won't even get it off the ground. You'll spin your wheels. You'll try and get the cheap money rather than getting the money that's actually going to get you, or getting the funding stack that's actually going to get you the deal. And your costs go up. Your costs go up means that your feeso's out of whack. Your feasibility's out of whack means your net profit after the actual development, your margin, has just shrunk, all because you wasted time trying to get cheap money, whereas you come to a lender like ourselves or a broker like ourselves and we'll get you the best deal that we can across a few different lenders in the space. The third part is not having a staged funding plan. What does that even mean? Well, a stage funding plan, I'm going to talk a little bit more about it in my next section, but you're just trying to do everything all at once. It's all rushed. You don't know how much you need. Your funding table's out because whoever you're using doesn't actually understand what you're actually trying to do. You've gone to a lender, you don't understand the fees or the costs associated with going to that particular lender, and therefore you've forked out all this cash, you've purchased the property, and then you can't even do the development because you've run out of cash or you just don't have enough cash to finish. This is where you get stuck. So this is a great segue into the next point I'm going to talk about. The 3-stage development funding framework that we use. Stage 1, your land and acquisition. Stage 2, funding the construction/development. Stage 3, refinancing, or what is your end debt strategy with the equity or the uplift. Now, is it in that order? No, I actually work backwards. It goes stage 3, 2, 1. The reason being is we need to work backwards from the exit to understand what our funds to complete are going to be across both stages. So let's break that down even further. A lot of clients will come to me and go, oh, I've got this block of land or I've got this property with a house on it and we want to knock it down and split the block 1 into 2 and we're going to build 2 houses. And the first question I ask them is where's your feasibility? Don't have one. All right, great. Go get one. Okay, well, then the next question I'm asking is, what is the exit? The exit, which is stage 3. Why is that important? Well, that actually helps us understand how we need to set the debt structure up in the beginning and also in the middle to be able to exit. So there's 2 ways you can exit there's many ways you can exit, but the 2 main ways we see is you're going to sell, which is fine. Great. Selling, make sure it's in your feasibility. Make sure you got your selling costs, advertising costs, the staging, all that sort of stuff, accounting costs, solicitors costs. Make sure that's all costed for. Or we refinance back out to a mainstream lender upon completion. They're 2 very different exits, which require 2 very different funding strategies. If we're exiting to hold the properties, then I need to know where it's going to go before we start anything else. Because generally, depending on the type of project, you'll need to be able to service that end debt. We also then look at, can we release some equity on the end based on the gross realization value at the end? Because we want to repay back any sort of funds that you've put into this deal. Then if we're going to sell the properties, well, that's easy. The exit is to sell. We need to make sure in the construction funding for both the exit of refinance and the exit of sell that we actually allow enough time to, 1, finish the build. If you think a build's going to get done in 9 months, please add a buffer of at least 6 more months. I usually allow 15 to 18 months in our construction funding, which is fine. Again, that's depending on how much cash we have. But if it finishes in 12, it actually then allows you to, if you're going to sell, stage the property, get it advertised. If you're building 2 properties side by side, you might not want to stage them together. You might actually want to stage the construction, one to finish before the other, so that we've got a sales evidence. So you try to sell the first one before you sell the second one. So you've got sales evidence that the first one's gone for X and then the second one could potentially go for a little bit more. Again, it's all about adding value at the end and speaking to your agent and understanding that piece. But we don't want to leave you short. We want to have the construction finished. It's staged so you get the best sale price. When you're going to exit, we want it, if you're going to have it rented out, and it depends on what type of project you're doing. If you're doing a rooming house project, you want to actually have it rented out and you've got the leases in place before we go and refinance that loan out, because then we've actually got the real value of the property, not the hearsay value based on a rental appraisal. Believe me when I say that when we're doing a rooming house and we're exiting to keep, that is make or break the valuation. So having enough time to do the construction, but then also having enough time to make sure you exit safely. Great. Then before that, well, how do we acquire the property so you're not rushed? Well, we use a multitude of different types of lending for this. If it's a house on a block of land, house on a block of land, well, it's just a standard residential purchase. Yep, when we do the construction finance, depending on what we're doing and what the strategy is, we may have to refinance that out to the lender that's going to do the construction finance. Or if you've got the servicing, we may be able to do the construction finance with the current lender, but most of the time, depending on the exit, will determine on how we actually do the construction and how we do the land and acquisition or the land and or the home purchase. So before doing the purchase, we also need to understand what entities you're purchasing in, because that actually then affects the construction funding and the exit depending on the end product that you're doing. So when I say there's 3 stages to develop the development funding, there's a lot that actually goes into it before we even recommend a lender to go to. So it's all strategic, which then leads me to my next point. What do we do differently with our development clients? Well, like I've just said, we take your feasibility, we actually give you our feasibility as well, and we get you to enter that in. We've got our own feasibility study, which is a bit more elaborate because it's for our paper that we're actually wanting to give to the lenders to support the application. We really look at all the numbers, and we also look at worst case scenario. We know that developers love to always give best case, but the really good developers, and here's a hot tip, will give you, hey, this is what we need to break even, or like this is our point. You know, if we'd actually be okay if we lost 2%, or if we made 2-3% on top of this mid-range. And there's a lot of thought process that goes into it. You can tell the difference between a really good developer or someone that's done it before and someone that's doing it for the first time. I have to do less education. And the reason why we use that feasibility study of our own and also keep you, get your information is we've got to sell you to the lender. We're doing a project, we're selling you. So the other thing we ask you to do that other lenders may not get you to do is we actually get you to give us a CV of your product. You're the product. What have you done? Why should a lender lend to you for a project? Because, gosh, if a lender's lending you $2 to $3 million, they've got to have a pretty good reason why, and they've got to see that you are worthy of getting that cash. Because we know the lenders that will take certain deals. We know the lenders that will allow a DA uplift or a development approval uplift. We know lenders that either will use pre-sales or not. We also know the lenders that will use the actual real value upon completion versus land plus build equals value, and then they use the LVR off the back of that, which kind of doesn't help. That's how most banks do it. So that's a hot tip. That's why you don't go to your bank, because that's another reason why you'll run out of cash, because the banks they'll use the worst case scenario, being land plus build equals value, and they use the LVR based on that. Whereas maybe a lender that does a lot of developments will use different things like total development costs. Some of them may fund right up to 80% of total development costs. This is why it's really important that your feasibility study is done correctly, so that we understand the total cost, and we're giving that to the lender. So the lender understands the total cost, less GST, everyone, less GST. And then that allows us to pick the right lender for you. So hopefully you guys got a little bit out of that. Now, I have to say, again, the information on this podcast is very general in nature. It doesn't take into consideration your personal circumstances. If you've got a development that you're looking to do, let's have a chat about it. You can find me on LinkedIn, Dion Fernandes, on Instagram at Dion Finance Specialist, the financethepropertythat.com.au website. Not that hard to find. emergefinance.com.au as well. But again, developments are fun, but there's an element of risk and you want to de-risk yourself, go to a lender or go to a broker like myself that actually understands these types of developments, small, medium or large, that can guide you through the process and is not just going to say yes and is actually going to work hard for the right outcome for you. Because if you win, that's what matters to us. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode.